I used to believe that hard work could fix almost anything. If I just keep going, I often told myself, things will get better. 4 years, I woke up before sunrise, worked long shifts, skipped meals, and took every extra job I could find. My hands were covered with small cuts and grease stains, but I never complained. I wasn't chasing luxury. I only wanted a peaceful home and a happy marriage. Instead, every month seemed harder than the last. Emily stood in our small kitchen one evening, looking around with disappointment. She folded her arms and sighed. "Look at this place," she said. "We've been married for 5 years, and we're still living like this." I looked up from my dinner. "I know it's not perfect." "Not perfect," she laughed bitterly. "It's embarrassing." I stayed quiet. She shook her head. "My friends are buying houses." I nodded slowly. "They're traveling." "I know." "They're starting families." "I know." "And what do I have?" she asked. "A husband who works all day but still can't give me a better life." Her words hurt, but I forced a smile. "I'm trying, Emily." "You always say that." "Because it's true." "No," she snapped. "Trying isn't enough anymore." I lowered my eyes to my plate. She had no idea where my money went. Every time I received my pay, almost all of it disappeared before I even touched it. I could have explained everything. I could have told her the truth. But I had made a promise. Some promises cost more than money. Some cost everything. Emily walked closer and placed another unpaid electricity bill on the table. "Look at this." "I'll handle it." "When?" "Soon." "You always say soon." I rubbed my forehead. "I'm doing my best." "Maybe your best just isn't good enough." The room became silent. I wanted to tell her that every sacrifice had a reason. I wanted to tell her that every late payment, every old shirt, every broken appliance existed because someone else needed me more. But those words stayed trapped inside me. She stared at me for several long seconds. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I whispered, "I'm still the same man you married." "No," she replied quietly. "That man had dreams." "I still do." "Really? What are they?" I couldn't answer. Not because I had no dreams. Because my biggest dream wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to someone who had once saved my life. Emily laughed without humor. "See? You don't even know." She picked up her handbag. "I'm going out." "With Sarah?" "Yes." "Be careful." She paused at the door. "You know what bothers me the most?" "What?" "You never fight for us." I looked at her. "If fighting means shouting, then no. It means caring." "I do care." "Then prove it." The door closed behind her. I sat alone for almost an hour, staring at the cold food in front of me. My phone buzzed. A message appeared. "Hospital payment due tomorrow." I closed my eyes. "I'll find the money," I whispered. I promised. The next few days passed quietly. Emily barely spoke to me. Every conversation became shorter. Every silence became longer. One Friday evening, I came home carrying a small grocery bag. The apartment was unusually clean. Emily sat at the dining table. She wore a calm expression. Too calm. "You're home," she said. "I am." "Sit down." Something inside me tightened. I placed the groceries on the counter and sat across from her. She slid a large envelope across the table. "What's this?" "Open it." My fingers slowly lifted the flap. Inside were several legal documents. My heart stopped. Divorce papers. I looked at her. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious." I read the first page without saying a word. She watched my face carefully. "Aren't you going to ask why?" "I think I already know." "Do you?" "You've been unhappy for a long time." "I'm exhausted," she replied. "I'm tired of pretending money doesn't matter." "It shouldn't matter this much." "It does. We promised to stay together. We promised to build a future. We still can." She slowly shook her head. "No, we can't." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "So this is it?" "Yes." "You've already made your decision?" "I have." "What if I ask you to stay?" She looked at me with empty eyes. Would anything change? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her everything. About the hospital. About the bills. About the man whose life depended on my silence. Instead, I simply lowered my head. "No," I whispered. Emily pushed a pen toward me. Then sign. I picked it up. My hand trembled. Not because I was afraid of losing the house. Not because I cared about the furniture. I was signing away the woman I still loved. A single tear landed on the paper before I wrote my name. Emily looked surprised. "That's all?" she asked softly. I nodded. "I won't force someone to stay if they've already left in their heart." She stared at me for a long moment, unable to read the thoughts I refused to share. The silence after I left my old home followed me into the tiny room I rented above a corner shop. It had one narrow bed, a cracked mirror, a small table, and a window that looked over a noisy street. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I dropped my old backpack onto the floor. "Well," I muttered to myself, "this is home now." My phone buzzed. Daniel calling. I answered. "Hello." "You finally picked up," Daniel said. "I've been trying to reach you all day." "I'm okay." "No, you're not." "I'll survive." He sighed. "Where are you?" "I found a room." "Send me the address." "You don't have to come. I'm already getting my car keys." I smiled for the first time in days. "You never listen." "No," he laughed. "Not when my best friend lies to me." An hour later, someone knocked on the door. "It's open." Daniel stepped inside carrying 2 takeaway meals. He looked around the tiny room before shaking his head. "You deserve better than this." I shrugged. "It's quiet. It's depressing. I've had worse." He placed the food on the table. "When was the last time you ate properly?" "I don't remember." I figured. We sat in silence for a few minutes before he looked directly at me. "Why didn't you stop her?" I opened my drink. "Because she had already made up her mind." "You could have told her." "I couldn't." "You still won't tell her the truth." I slowly shook my head. "A promise is a promise." Daniel leaned back. "One promise just cost you your marriage." "I know." "Was it worth it?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, my thoughts drifted back several years. Back to the worst day of my life. I had been driving home after another late shift when a truck ran a red light. Everything happened in seconds. The crash threw my car into a barrier. I remembered broken glass. I remembered blood on my hands. Then darkness. When I finally opened my eyes in hospital, an elderly man was sitting beside my bed. "You finally woke up," he said with a gentle smile. "Who are you?" "My name is Raymond Hale." I frowned. "I don't know you." "No," he replied. "But I saw your accident." "You helped me?" "I pulled you out before the car caught fire." I stared at him. "You saved my life." He smiled. "I simply did what anyone should do." But he was wrong. Not everyone would have risked their own life for a stranger. From that day, I visited him often. He had no wife. No children. No brothers or sisters. Little by little, he became the father I had never had. Daniel's voice pulled me back. "I remember the accident." I nodded. "He gave me a second chance." "And then he got sick." I closed my eyes. "Yes." A year after I married Emily, Mr. Raymond received terrible news. The doctors diagnosed him with a rare illness. The treatment was expensive. Far more expensive than he could ever afford. "I'll refuse it," he had told me. "I won't let you. You have your own family now. You are family." He looked away. "I can't let you ruin your life for me." I smiled. "You once saved my life. I didn't expect repayment." "This isn't repayment." "What is it?" "It's gratitude." His eyes filled with tears. "I can't ask you to do this." "You didn't ask." "So why?" "Because I would never forgive myself if I walked away." That night I made him a promise. "I'll pay whatever it costs." "You don't even know the amount." "I don't care. It's too much." "I gave you my word." He reached for my hand. "Then promise me something else." "What?" "Don't tell anyone." I frowned. "Why?" "I don't want people feeling sorry for me." "But Emily." "No. She'll ask questions." "Tell her you're saving money." "I hate lying." "I know. But let an old man keep a little dignity." After a long silence, I nodded. "I promise." That promise changed everything. Every overtime shift. Every missed holiday. Every old shirt I kept wearing. Every unpaid bill. Every pound I earned disappeared into his treatment. Emily only saw empty bank accounts. She never saw the hospital receipts. She never saw me sitting beside Mr. Raymond during chemotherapy. She never heard him apologize every single month. "I'm sorry," he always whispered. "You don't need to apologize. I've taken enough from you. You gave me life. I only saved one day. You gave me every day after it." Daniel rubbed his face. "I still think Emily deserved to know. I wanted to tell her 100 times. So why didn't you?" "Because every time I was about to speak, I remembered my promise." He looked at me carefully. "And now? It doesn't matter anymore." "It does." "No. She divorced you because she thought you were irresponsible." "I know. She thinks you wasted your money." "I know. She thinks you never loved her." I swallowed hard. That part hurts the most. Daniel stood and walked to the window. "One day she'll learn the truth." "Maybe. And when she does?" I looked at the worn photograph inside my wallet. It showed Emily smiling beside me on our wedding day. "I don't want revenge." "What do you want?" "I just want Mr. Raymond to get better." Daniel turned back toward me. "And if he doesn't?" I couldn't answer. The room became painfully quiet. A few seconds later, my phone rang. The screen showed the hospital's number. My heart began racing. I answered immediately. "This is Raymond Hale's room," the nurse said softly. "Could you come as soon as possible?" I stood so quickly that my chair fell onto the floor. "What happened?" "I'm afraid his condition has suddenly become much worse." The call ended. Daniel grabbed his car keys without saying a word. As we hurried downstairs, I whispered the only prayer I could think of. "Please, don't take him away from me." 3 weeks after the divorce, I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. There was no point. Emily hadn't called. She hadn't sent a message. She hadn't asked if I was eating or sleeping. Instead, the only thing I saw was her smiling face all over social media. Daniel walked into my rented room holding 2 coffees. "You've seen it, haven't you?" "I didn't mean to." He handed me a cup. "Then don't look again." I forced a smile. "Too late." He sat beside me. "She posted pictures with him." "I know. They're everywhere." "I know." Daniel sighed. "I'm sorry." I looked down at the phone lying on the table. Emily stood beside a tall man wearing an expensive suit. His arm rested confidently around her shoulders while she smiled brighter than I had seen in years. The caption read, "Finally choosing the life I deserve." Thousands of people had liked it. The comments hurt even more. "You upgraded. He's so much better. You finally escaped. Real men provide." I locked the screen. I shouldn't have looked. Daniel shook his head. "People believe whatever they see." "I know. They don't know the truth. They're not supposed to." He frowned. "You still think protecting that promise is worth all this?" I looked out of the window. "I gave Mr. Raymond my word." "And what about your own life?" "My life isn't more important than my word." Daniel didn't answer. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it wasn't from Emily. It was from an old colleague. "Sorry things didn't work out. Maybe Emily was right. You never seemed ambitious." I quietly deleted the message. Daniel noticed. "What was that?" "Nothing important." "Let me guess. They think I'm the villain." He clenched his jaw. "I swear, one day they're going to regret judging you." "Maybe. You don't sound angry." "I'm tired, Daniel." "Tired?" "Of defending myself inside my own head." He looked at me for a long moment. "You still love her?" I answered without thinking. "Yes." "Even after everything?" I closed my eyes. Love doesn't disappear the moment someone hurts you. A few days later I visited Mr. Raymond in hospital. He smiled the moment I entered. "There you are. How are you feeling today?" I felt worse. I laughed softly. "That's not a real answer. It's the only one I've got." I pulled a chair closer. The nurse finished checking his medicine before quietly leaving us alone. Mr. Raymond studied my face. "You look thinner." "I've been busy." "You've also been pretending." I smiled weakly. "I'm getting worse at hiding things." "What happened?" I stayed silent. He raised one eyebrow. "Your wife?" I nodded. "We're divorced." His smile disappeared. "Oh. It wasn't your fault." I never asked you to sacrifice your marriage. You never did. You could have told her. I made a promise. He lowered his head. Sometimes I wish you hadn't. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I don't. Tears filled his eyes. You've already given me more than I deserved. You gave me life first. He looked away before quietly saying, I hope one day someone gives that same kindness back to you. Later that afternoon I walked outside the hospital when I heard a familiar voice. Well, if it isn't my favorite mechanic. I turned around. A tall man in an expensive navy suit smiled confidently. I recognized him immediately. Victor Lawson. Emily's new boyfriend. He extended his hand. I've heard a lot about you. I ignored the handshake. What do you want? He chuckled. Relax. I just wanted to introduce myself properly. I know who you are. I'm sure you do. He glanced at my worn trainers before looking back into my eyes. Tough times? I'm managing. I suppose that's all people like you can do. I remained silent. He smiled again. You know, Emily deserves someone who can actually give her the life she wants. I looked straight at him. I hope you can. Oh, I already am. He took out his car keys and spun them around one finger. I booked us a holiday in Italy next month. Good for you. You don't seem jealous. I don't need to compete with anyone. His smile faded slightly. You know, I expected more of a reaction. I'm late. Hospital visit. I froze for half a second. Victor noticed. Family member? I simply answered. Someone important. He shrugged. Well, enjoy your evening. As he walked away, I noticed something strange. His phone rang. The confident smile vanished instantly. Yes, sir, he said nervously. No. She doesn't know anything. He quickly looked around before lowering his voice. I'll handle it. He ended the call and drove away without noticing me watching. For the first time, I had the feeling Victor Lawson wasn't nearly as perfect as everyone believed. Back in my room that evening, Daniel called. I've got news. What happened? I met someone today. Who? An old business partner of Mr. Raymond. I sat up. And? He asked about you. Why? Daniel's voice grew serious. Because he says Mr. Raymond has been recommending your name for a management position. I blinked in disbelief. A management job? Yes. I've never managed anything. He disagrees. I stared at the wall in silence. For weeks I had felt like my life was ending. Now, for the first time since signing those divorce papers, it felt as though one small door had quietly opened. I had no idea that stepping through it would change everything. I rushed into Mr. Raymond's hospital room as soon as the nurse called me. He smiled weakly when he saw me. You came. I always will. You've been here every day. I'll keep coming every day. He let out a quiet laugh. You really are stubborn. I learned from the best. He reached for my hand. His grip was much weaker than before. I've been thinking. About what? My time. I shook my head. Don't talk like that. You know the truth. I don't want to hear it. You have to. I looked away, trying to hide the tears building in my eyes. He sighed. You've already done more for me than any son could. You are my family. I know. If I had to choose again, I'd make the same promise. His eyes became wet. That's exactly what breaks my heart. A doctor entered the room, checked the monitors, and quietly spoke to me outside. We're doing everything we can. Will he recover? The doctor hesitated. I think you should prepare yourself. Those words felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. When I returned, Mr. Raymond smiled again. Don't make that face. I'm trying. You were never good at pretending. I laughed through my tears. Neither were you. For the next 2 weeks, I barely left the hospital. I worked during the day and spent every evening beside his bed. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we simply sat in silence. One evening he asked, Do you miss Emily? I answered honestly. Every day. Do you hate her? No. Why not? Because loving someone doesn't disappear overnight. He nodded slowly. You're a better man than most. I'm just tired. I know. A few days later, his breathing became weaker. The nurse adjusted his blanket before quietly leaving us alone. Mr. Raymond looked at me with gentle eyes. I need one last favor. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stop living. I don't want to lose you. You already saved me. I didn't save you. You gave me years I never expected to have. He squeezed my hand. Promise me you'll be happy. I'll try. No. He smiled. Promise. I promise. His breathing slowed. Thank you for treating an old man with dignity. Thank you for giving me a second chance at life. A peaceful smile appeared on his face. I've always been proud to call you my son. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. The monitor let out a long, steady tone. I lowered my head onto the side of his bed and cried harder than I ever had before. For the first time since the accident years ago, I truly felt alone. 3 days later, after the funeral, I sat quietly in a lawyer's office. A woman wearing a dark suit walked in carrying several folders. I'm Helen Ross, she said gently. Mr. Raymond's attorney. I nodded. Thank you for meeting with me. He specifically requested that you attend today. She opened a file. Mr. Raymond updated his will 6 months ago. I frowned. I didn't know. He wanted it to be a surprise. She handed me an envelope. He wrote this letter for you. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. My dear son. If you're reading this, it means I've finally found my peace. I know you'll blame yourself for not saving me, but you already did. You gave me years filled with kindness instead of loneliness. You gave an old man a family when he had none. You never broke your promise, even when it cost you your marriage. That kind of loyalty cannot be bought. Now it's my turn to keep a promise. I stopped reading for a moment, unable to hold back my tears. Helen quietly waited. When I continued, the final lines left me speechless. I leave you 30% of my company and everything connected to my personal foundation. Lead them with the same honesty you've shown me. Never let money change the man you already are. I slowly lowered the letter. There has to be a mistake. Helen smiled. There isn't. I never helped him for money. I know. He never owed me anything. He believed otherwise. She slid another folder across the table. You are now one of the company's principal owners. I stared at the documents. Only weeks earlier, I had been sleeping in a tiny rented room, wondering how I would pay next month's rent. Now I had financial security beyond anything I had imagined. Yet my heart didn't feel lighter. I'd gladly have traded every pound to hear Mr. Raymond call me son one more time. As I walked out of the office, I looked up at the sky and whispered, I kept my promise. Now I'll keep the last one too. I'll live the life you wanted for me, even if it takes time for my heart to believe it. 6 months passed before I was ready to attend another public event. Laura Evans, the director of Mr. Raymond's Charity Foundation, called me herself. I hope you'll come, she said. This event is about celebrating Mr. Raymond's life. He would have wanted you there. I don't enjoy attention. I know. I'd rather stay in the background. She laughed softly. That's exactly why you need to come. I finally agreed. The evening of the charity gala arrived, and I stood outside the hall wearing the only black suit I owned. Daniel adjusted my tie. You look nervous. I am. It's only a charity event. No. What do you mean? I have a feeling tonight is going to change something. He smiled. Maybe it will change everything. As we entered the ballroom, I noticed familiar faces everywhere. Former colleagues. Old neighbors. Business owners. Then I saw Emily. She was standing beside Victor Lawson in a beautiful blue dress. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She quickly looked away. Victor leaned closer and whispered something that made her force a smile. Daniel quietly muttered, "Still hurts." I answered honestly. A little. Laura walked onto the stage. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we honor the life of Raymond Hale, a man whose kindness changed countless lives. The audience applauded. She continued. Tonight isn't only about remembering Mr. Hale. It's also about recognizing someone who made his final years possible. I frowned. Daniel glanced at me. Did you know about this? I shook my head. Laura smiled warmly. Before his passing, Mr. Hale left specific instructions that the truth should only be revealed after enough time had passed. The room became completely silent. I'd like to invite attorney Helen Ross to the stage. Helen walked up carrying a folder. She looked directly at me before speaking. For several years, Many people believed Mr. Raymond Hale simply had excellent medical insurance. She paused. That was not true. People exchanged confused looks. The reality is that one man quietly paid for nearly every treatment, every operation, and every hospital bill. Whispers spread across the room. Helen continued. He refused recognition. He refused repayment. He even kept his identity hidden because he honored a private promise. Emily slowly turned toward me. I lowered my eyes. Helen opened another document. The man who made those sacrifices was. She looked straight at me. Mr. Ethan Carter. Gasps echoed across the hall. I could hear people whispering my name. That can't be true. I thought he was broke. Wasn't that why they divorced? Helen raised her hand for silence. Mr. Carter worked extra hours for years. He lived far below his means. He delayed his own dreams. And every pound he could spare went toward saving another human being. Emily's face lost all color. Victor shifted uncomfortably beside her. Helen continued reading. Mr. Hale specifically wrote that Mr. Carter never accepted anything in return and remained loyal even after losing his marriage because of that promise. Laura invited Daniel onto the stage. Daniel took a deep breath. I've known Ethan since we were teenagers. He looked around the room. I begged him to tell Emily the truth. He smiled sadly. He refused. Someone asked loudly, why? Daniel answered without hesitation. Because he gave his word. He believed loyalty mattered more than being understood. The ballroom fell silent again. I wished I could disappear. Laura gently motioned for me to join them. I slowly walked onto the stage. She handed me the microphone. I know you don't like speeches, she whispered. I nodded. I looked at the crowd. I never wanted anyone to know. Nobody spoke. I didn't help Mr. Raymond because I expected praise. I swallowed the lump in my throat. He saved my life years ago. My debt could never truly be repaid. I only wanted him to live with dignity. I looked toward Emily. She couldn't meet my eyes. I know many people believed I failed as a husband. I don't blame anyone. I never explained myself. I chose silence. That choice had consequences. A woman near the front wiped away tears. I continued. If I had broken my promise, maybe my marriage would have survived. I paused. But then I wouldn't have been the man Mr. Raymond believed I was. The room erupted into applause. I didn't feel victorious. I only felt relieved. As I stepped away from the microphone, Emily suddenly walked toward me. Ethan. Her voice trembled. I didn't know. I gave a small nod. I know. Tears streamed down her face. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to. Then why? Because I promised him. She covered her mouth as she cried. I called you a failure. You did. I thought you didn't care about our future. I cared every single day. She shook her head. I'm so sorry. Before I could answer, Victor grabbed her arm. We're leaving. Emily pulled her arm away. No. Victor's calm expression cracked. This isn't the place. She looked at him. No, this is exactly the place. People watched quietly as Victor became increasingly uncomfortable. One guest suddenly asked him, so what great sacrifices have you made for someone else? Victor forced a laugh. That's not really my style. Another voice replied, we can see that. Murmurs spread through the crowd. For the first time all evening, Victor had no confident answer. His perfect image had begun to crack. I looked at Emily one last time. I never wanted revenge. I believe you, she whispered. I only wanted to keep a promise. As Daniel and I walked toward the exit, he smiled. Do you realize what just happened? I looked back at the silent ballroom. The truth finally caught up with everyone. Daniel nodded. And now their lives will never be the same. Deep inside, I knew he was right. The promise that had cost me everything had finally come to an end. Now another chapter of my life was about to begin. 3 days after the charity event, my phone rang while I was sitting in my office. The screen showed a name I never expected to see again. Emily. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. Hello. Her voice was quiet. Ethan, thank you for picking up. What do you need? Can we meet? I stayed silent. Please, she whispered. Just once. After a long pause, I replied, 1 hour. The cafe near the old park. I'll be there. When I arrived, Emily was already waiting. She looked different. The expensive clothes were gone. There was no confident smile. She looked exhausted. I sat across from her. You wanted to talk. She nodded. I don't even know where to start. Start with the truth. Tears filled her eyes. I was cruel. You were. I judged you. You did. I thought money was everything. I looked at her quietly. She wiped her eyes. I kept asking why you never fought back. I answered softly, because I loved you. She covered her face. Please don't say that. It's the truth. I don't deserve to hear it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, why didn't you trust me? I took a deep breath. It wasn't about trust. Then what was it? I gave Mr. Raymond my word. You chose a promise over our marriage. I chose to honor the man who saved my life. She lowered her head. And I never even asked what you were carrying. No. I just assumed the worst. Yes. She cried quietly. I remember calling you a failure. I remember telling you that I deserved better. I nodded. You did. She looked up in surprise. No, Ethan. I didn't. You deserved happiness. I already had it. She reached across the table. I was too blind to see it. I gently pulled my hand back. She noticed. So, it's really over? I looked out of the cafe window. I don't know. I've thought about us every day. So have I. I still love you. Those words hurt more than I expected. Part of me wanted to believe them. Another part remembered the divorce papers lying on our dining table. I don't know if love is enough anymore, I admitted. She nodded slowly. I understand. Before either of us could speak again, my phone buzzed. Daniel had sent me a news article. Lawson Group under investigation for investor fraud. I opened it. Emily noticed my expression. What happened? I turned the phone towards her. She read the headline. Her face turned pale. No. She immediately grabbed her own phone. A dozen missed calls. Several news alerts. Victor's company had frozen its accounts. Former business partners were accusing him of lying about investments. Millions had disappeared. Emily whispered, he told me everything was legal. I remained silent. She tried calling Victor. No answer. Again. No answer. Then another call came in. It was Sarah. Emily answered immediately. Sarah? Ethan was right. What? Victor has been arrested for questioning. Emily's hand began shaking. That's impossible. I've just seen it on the news. The call ended. Emily slowly placed her phone on the table. I don't understand. I quietly replied, sometimes people only show us the version they want us to see. She looked at me. I left an honest man for someone I barely knew. Neither of us spoke. An elderly waiter walked over. Would either of you like more tea? I smiled politely. No, thank you. After he walked away, Emily whispered, do you think this is karma? I thought carefully before answering. I think people eventually meet the consequences of their own choices. She nodded. I earned mine. Over the next week, the news became worse for Victor. Every morning another headline appeared. New witness comes forward. Business assets frozen. Luxury homes seized. Former partners testify. The same people who once praised him now pretended they had never known him. One afternoon Daniel walked into my office carrying a newspaper. Have you seen this? I have. He lost almost everything. I know. Daniel folded the paper. Funny how quickly people disappear when the money does. I smiled sadly. They were never his friends. Daniel looked at me carefully. And Emily? What about her? Do you feel sorry for her? I didn't answer immediately. Finally I said, yes. After everything? I wouldn't wish this kind of pain on anyone. He leaned against the desk. You're still the same man. I don't know if that's a good thing. It is. A few days later, Emily visited my office without warning. She stood quietly by the door. I won't stay long. I invited her inside. She looked around the office. I'm proud of you. Thank you. I heard what you've done with Mr. Raymond's company. We're trying to help more families. She smiled faintly. He would be proud. I hope so. She took a deep breath. I don't expect forgiveness. I know. I only wanted to say one last thing. I waited. You were never poor. I frowned. She continued, you were the richest person I ever knew. I looked at her silently. You had loyalty. You had kindness. You had integrity. I was too busy chasing money to see any of it. A tear rolled down her cheek. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I felt my chest tighten. For a brief moment, I remembered our wedding day. Her smile. Our promises. The future we had dreamed about. Then another memory replaced it. The divorce papers. The cold look in her eyes. The sound of the pen as I signed my name. I slowly stood. Emily. Yes? I don't hate you. She cried harder. But I'm still healing. She nodded. I understand. I hope one day you forgive yourself. She managed a small smile. And you? I looked out of the office window. I'm still learning how. She quietly walked away. I watched the door close behind her. For the first time, I realized the hardest battle of my life was no longer against betrayal. It was against the part of my heart that still remembered how deeply I had once loved her. Almost 2 months passed after my last conversation with Emily. Life slowly settled into a routine. During the day, I worked at Mr. Raymond's company, making sure every decision reflected the values he had taught me. In the evenings, I visited the charity foundation. Helping families who struggled with medical bills reminded me why I had made every sacrifice in the first place. One Saturday morning, Laura walked into my office. Ethan, we have a new volunteer. That's great. She smiled. I think you already know her. I looked up. Emily stood quietly behind her. She wore simple clothes, tied her hair back, and held a small box of donated books. She avoided my eyes. Laura looked between us. I'll let you two talk. After she walked away, an awkward silence filled the room. Emily spoke first. I hope you don't mind. This charity belongs to everyone. I'm not here because of you. I know. I'm here because I finally understand what Mr. Raymond meant to you. I nodded. He changed my life. I can see that now. Without another word, she carried the books into the storage room and spent the rest of the afternoon helping elderly patients fill out paperwork. She never tried to impress anyone. She simply worked. Daniel noticed. As we locked the office that evening, he smiled. She's different. People can change. They can. He looked at me carefully. But change doesn't erase the past. I sighed. I know. A few weeks later, I found Emily sitting alone in the charity garden after everyone else had left. She looked up as I approached. I wasn't waiting for you. I didn't think you were. She smiled faintly. I used to think expensive restaurants made people happy. And now, I've learned a quiet garden can mean much more. I sat on the bench beside her. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally she whispered, I've been volunteering here for 6 weeks. I noticed. I wanted to prove I could become a better person. You already have. She looked surprised. You really think so? I do. Then, is there any chance for us? Her question stayed in the air. I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. I've asked myself that every night. And? I don't know how to go back. Tears filled her eyes. I've changed. I believe you. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. You can't. Why not? Because some things aren't meant to be repaid. She lowered her head. I broke your trust. Yes. I broke your heart. Yes. She wiped away her tears. I'm so sorry. I know you are. She looked at me with hope still shining in her eyes. Then why can't we start again? I took a deep breath. Because the man you divorced doesn't exist anymore. She frowned. What do you mean? I spent years believing that staying silent would fix everything. I smiled sadly. I was wrong. I should have asked questions. You should have. I should have trusted you. You should have. I can't change that. No. She whispered, I miss my husband. I answered gently. And I miss my wife. Her shoulders trembled. But we're not those people anymore. She cried quietly. I understand. That evening I met Daniel for dinner. He studied my face. You finally decided, didn't you? I think so. What are you going to do? I'll forgive her. He smiled. I knew you would. But I won't marry her again. His smile faded. Are you sure? I have to be. You still love her. I always will. Then why? Because love isn't the only thing a marriage needs. Daniel slowly nodded. Trust. Exactly. He raised his coffee cup. Mr. Raymond would be proud. I hope so. The following weekend, I asked Emily to meet me at the old park where we had once planned our future together. She arrived wearing the same hopeful expression I remembered from years ago. I've been praying for this meeting, she said. I smiled gently. So have I. We walked slowly along the path. Finally I stopped beneath the large oak tree. Emily. Yes? I forgive you. She burst into tears. Thank you. I don't want either of us to carry this pain forever. She nodded repeatedly. I promise I'll never hurt you again. I gently shook my head. You don't have to make promises anymore. She looked confused. I don't understand. I forgive you. I paused, fighting back my own emotions. But I can't come back. The hope disappeared from her face. So, this is goodbye? No. It's the beginning of a different chapter. She cried quietly. I was too late. I nodded. Yes. I'm sorry. I know. She stepped closer and hugged me. For a second, I almost held on. Almost. Then I slowly let go. She smiled through her tears. I'll always be grateful that I met you. And I'll always hope you find peace. You too. She turned and walked away without looking back. I watched until she disappeared beyond the trees. My heart ached, but it also felt lighter than it had in years. Forgiveness had set both of us free. As I looked up at the evening sky, I whispered the words I wished I had understood long ago. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't getting back what you lost. It's having the strength to let it go. Then I turned around and walked toward the future that was finally, completely, my own. 5 years passed more quickly than I ever imagined. Some mornings I still caught myself reaching for memories that no longer hurt the way they once had. Instead of waking up with regret, I woke up with purpose. Mr. Raymond's company had grown into something far greater than a successful business. We had expanded the charity foundation, creating a program that helped elderly patients pay for treatments they could never have afforded alone. Every time someone thanked me, I quietly smiled. I'm only continuing what Mr. Raymond started. One afternoon, Laura walked into my office carrying a thick folder. We've reached another milestone. What is it? She placed the papers on my desk. As of today, the foundation has helped 1,000 families. I stared at the number. 1,000. She nodded proudly. You made that possible. I shook my head. No. You did. It was never just me. She smiled. You're still the same humble man. I hope I always will be. Daniel stepped into the office carrying a box of pastries. I heard there was good news. Laura laughed. He somehow always knows. Daniel placed the box on my desk. I also know someone is paying. I laughed. Fine. For once, he joked, the rich man buys lunch. I still don't think of myself as rich. He pointed toward the window overlooking the company headquarters. You own part of that building. I know. But the best thing I own isn't in any building. What is it? My peace. Daniel smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Later that afternoon, we held a celebration at the charity center. Volunteers, doctors, nurses, and families gathered together. Children laughed while elderly patients shared stories over tea. Looking around the room, I realized this was the kind of success I had dreamed about without even knowing it. Laura tapped the microphone. Before we finish today, there's someone who would like to say a few words. I frowned. Who? She smiled toward the audience. Emily slowly stood. For a brief moment, the room became completely quiet. She walked onto the stage wearing a simple white blouse with the charity's volunteer badge pinned over her heart. She looked at me before speaking. Years ago, I believed success was measured by money. She paused. I was wrong. Everyone listened carefully. I once lost someone because I cared more about wealth than character. Her voice trembled. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I lowered my eyes. She continued. But regret can either destroy a person or change them. She smiled softly. I chose to change. The audience applauded. Emily looked at me one last time. Ethan, thank you. I gave her a small nod. She returned to her seat. There was nothing left to say. After the event ended, I found her outside watching the sunset. She smiled. I wasn't sure if I should speak today. I'm glad you did. You really forgave me. I meant every word. She looked peaceful. So did I. We stood quietly for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you happy?" I looked at the people leaving the charity building. Daniel was helping an elderly man into a car. Laura was laughing with a group of volunteers. Children were chasing each other across the garden. I smiled. Yes. I'm happy too. I'm glad. She took a deep breath. You know, years ago I thought losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And now I realize losing the person I used to be was the best thing that could have happened. I smiled. Mr. Raymond would have liked hearing that. I think so too. She extended her hand. Friends? I looked at it for a second before shaking it. Friends. She walked away with a gentle smile. This time, neither of us looked back with sadness. Only gratitude. A few weeks later, I visited Mr. Raymond's grave carrying fresh white lilies. I placed them carefully beside the headstone. Hello, old man. A cool breeze moved through the trees. I kept my promise. I smiled. The company is doing well. The charity is growing. Daniel still eats too many pastries. I laughed quietly. And Emily? I paused. She's finally found the person she was meant to become. For a long moment, I simply stood there. Then I whispered the words I had carried in my heart for years. Thank you. If you hadn't stopped your car that day, I wouldn't have lived this life. I wouldn't have learned that kindness always matters. I wouldn't have understood that real wealth isn't counted in bank accounts. It's counted in lives touched. As I turned to leave, the evening sunlight stretched across the cemetery. For the first time in many years, I didn't feel like I was walking away from my past. I was walking beside it. Every painful memory had become a lesson. Every sacrifice had become a blessing. Every tear had helped shape the man I had become. People often ask me how I survived betrayal without becoming bitter. The answer is simple. I stopped asking why life had hurt me. I started asking what I could learn from it. Emily taught me that love without trust cannot survive. Victor taught me that greed eventually destroys itself. Daniel taught me the value of standing beside someone even when the whole world walks away. Mr. Raymond taught me that one act of kindness can echo through generations. As for me, I learned the greatest lesson of all. Silence once cost me the woman I loved. But integrity gave me something far more valuable. It gave me a life I could look back on without shame. I walked toward my car with a peaceful heart, knowing my story had never truly been about revenge. It had always been about becoming the kind of man who could lose everything, and still choose kindness. That was my quiet victory. And for the first time in my life, I knew it was enough.